you find yourself lost in Irvingland. If you read the title, you may be scratching your head right now. Episode 00? I know Irving keeps saying he can only count to 1, but really? Today, we're taking a moment to look at the original unaired pilot of the series. Why now? That'll become obvious as we go along, but I'll go ahead and spoil it. With some modifications, this pilot is the first 5 episodes. We have some major differences. For example, the ship is called the Gemini 12, only has 1 deck, and it doesn't have the super duper atomic engines that the Jupiter 2 does. Basically, they made this 1-hour pilot, but from what I've been able to glean, almost nobody liked it. So they took the basic framework, made some alterations, and expanded the story out to 5 full-length episodes. We've seen the result, so let's take a look at where it came from. A totally different theme, much more sinister. The font for the credits is the same, but it's got lots of sharp edges added. We're going full-on drama show here. And there's no opening credit for Jonathan Harris because this pilot doesn't include Dr. Smith. Almost all of the footage we'll see is going to look familiar because we already saw it in the episodes that actually went out over the airwaves.
This is Alpha Control. 0 minus 7 minutes and holding. Delay caused by difficulty with liquid oxygen loading valve.
We have some slightly different voiceover dubs, but the visuals are the same, and once we zoom in on that first reporter, all the dialogue and everything else is the same. When we're done with him, we'll get well over a minute of nothing but panning over the room from various angles, watching each foreign reporter talk, watching every individual technician do something to every individual computer console in the place, while listening to that voice drone on about the countdown. I wonder why test audiences didn't like this.
The spaceship's electronic brain will take over for the balance of the century-long hibernation, during which it will be traveling at the almost unimaginable speed of light.
Century long? Alpha Centauri is 4.5 light years away. It's our nearest star neighbor. If they're traveling at the speed of light and it takes them 100 years to go 4.5 light years, they need to call AAA and get a better roadmap. We go through the visual sequence of Dr. Robinson saying goodnight to his family as they enter their freezing tubes, but our narrator is introducing the Robinson family as he does. It's not a bad way to bring him into the picture.
Their daughter, Judith, age 19, was rather heroically postponed all hopes for a career in the musical comedy field for the next 2 centuries at least.
Musical comedy. There's a science that'll be useful on this expedition. Will is the most super genius anybody's ever seen. He graduated from the Science Academy at age 9, presumably in something other than musical comedy.
And their daughter, Penny, age 11, IQ 147, hobby, zoology.
If she's into zoology, that might explain why she decides to keep Debbie. Not only is she a pet, she can study her and try to figure out what she is. I kind of wish they'd kept the zoology thing in the series. Oh yes, not only is Major West the pilot, but he has a doctorate himself, and the narrator subtly suggests that he's responsible for finding this habitable planet they're headed for. Now here's something to ponder as we watch the family's cryotubes put them into suspended animation. If it's a 100-year journey, freezing them makes sense. But the trip wound up being only an estimated 5.5 years, so was this really necessary? We even reused the line about all that time passing and they only aged a second. 5 years isn't that long, unless we're concerned that they might get on each other's nerves after a while and the whole thing turn into a giant family war. You kids stop that squabbling right now or I'm turning this ship around and heading home. Doc, I'm the only one who can steer the ship. You kids stop that squabbling or Major West is turning this ship around and heading home. But John, won't that render this whole thing pointless? You're on report. The takeoff is a lot less impressive than the one that made it to the air, and the ship's disaster is caused by that meteor storm, mainly because ground control couldn't see it until it was too late.
Gemini 12's fantastic ability to regenerate its own damage controls is now the last hope for the safety of the Robinson family and the success of the flight.
The ship is self-repairing like those powered armor things in Fear 2. So long as there aren't too many bad guys with RPGs around, they should be okay. Ground control has lost all telemetry from the ship. They have to assume it's either destroyed or so far off course there's no recovering it. The ship itself is headed for a planet. Yes, that's the same footage, except next time there's nobody in the freezing tube. And we have to ask, if that planet orbiting Alpha Centauri is the nearest habitable planet we've found, and they're only traveling at the speed of light, if that after all that damage, where's this planet? What star is it orbiting? How did they get there? No explanation, nothing. There's just this convenient planet in the middle of nowhere, presumably orbiting a star since it has light and all that stuff. Just take our word for it. I wonder why test audiences didn't like this. Another thing I take issue with is the narrator keeps talking about how the intense forces and pressures required to escape Earth's gravity would tear the Robinsons apart if they weren't in their cryotubes. But men had already gone into orbit in space several times by the time this was made. Yuri Gagarin didn't have a cryotube, neither did Alan Shepard or John Glenn or any of the rest who had already gone up. I'm starting to think whoever wrote this got their science from Clyde Crash Cup.
December 3rd, in the year 2001. None of us knows for sure how long we traveled in suspended animation. Our atomic clock indicates 3.5 years.
Then my educated guess would be you traveled for 3.5 years. The question you should be asking is what direction and how fast? Dr. Robinson's journal continues, saying it's been 6 months since they crashed and they've built that self-sustaining camp. The most basic rule in writing a script or screenplay is show, don't tell. We'll see that Penny has Debbie already. We have no idea where she came from or what she is or how Penny came to be holding her. But we do get one thing that we didn't get in the actual series.
Meanwhile, all goes reasonably well. We've established a base camp, domesticated some of the local animals, and cultivated a small farm.
Debbie? Hey, come on back! Come back here when I say come back here! Children, wait till Daddy gets home. Come back here! Hey, come on, come...
We finally get to see what those creatures he was talking about look like. They're ostriches in plumed hats and furry leggings. I'm glad we cleared that up. Oh yeah, and like every other species on this planet, there's only one of them. The men are somewhere else. We didn't see them leave. We didn't get any explanation where they're going or why. Penny asks when they'll be back. Maureen says, I don't know, and we cut to them climbing a cliff. We know they're going up to check the weather station because a drastic change is coming that'll require them to relocate. Test audiences didn't have that luxury. They had to wait and wonder. The next several minutes deal with the weather station, discuss the temperature drop and the need to leave the ship, and the series pretty much used it without alteration. We've already seen it, but we had the advantage of knowing why they were doing this in the first place. We get the encounter with the giant, hiding in the cave, Will fixing the visual scanner, Maureen doing the laundry. All of it is lifted direct from here into the 4th episode. We've already seen it all. Will saves Dad from Don and the giant. Dad so gratefully chews him out for leaving the family. They pack the chariot. Reusing this footage explains why Dr. Smith stayed behind. It meant they didn't have to reshoot.
Where's Penny? Where's your sister? She was riding on the turtle, she and the blue. Then all of a sudden she was gone. Well, where did she go? I don't know. I turned around and she wasn't there anymore.
We watched John with the jetpack, Penny chewing the turtle out because she didn't have the good sense to jump off it when it started to run off. John rescues Penny and Debbie, leaving the poor turtle to freeze to death. Don preparing to leave and Judy warning him. At least now we know what she's warning him about. If he starts that motor, she'll start singing and telling jokes at him. We have the just-in-time arrival, the second encounter with the giant, trouble with the chariot, and camping for the night, including this scene.
Oh, Dad, bet you don't know what I saw. What? Judy and Don. He was kissing her on the hand like this. Bet he picked up 1,000,000 germs.
Oh, Penny, dear, young people sometimes have ways of doing things which, to wiser heads such as you and I, may seem a little strange.
In other words, I should mind my own business?
That's right.
I thought so.
We have learned one thing from this that we didn't from the actual series. Will's and Penny's ages. Penny is 11, which explains her combination of fascination and revulsion. Will is 9, which explains why he couldn't care less.
I do find it hard to think of Judy as anything but a child.
Well, considering the population implosion up here, we can't very well ask her to play the field now, can we?
Besides, I suspect she already did. We know from this series she and Don had a thing going before they ever started this journey, and even though it's never made explicit here, it's not hard to figure out.
Now I know the one scientific specialty we didn't bring from Earth.
What's that?
A marriage counselor.
For them.
No, for you. Honestly, Dr. Robinson, in the current circumstance, do you think formal marriage is worth bothering with? There aren't even any tax advantages. We follow them into the artificial cave, watch Will, Penny, Don, and Judy get trapped in the burial chamber, and the earthquake begins. We've already seen this.
December 5th, in the year 2001. The attack of the fearful lightning bolts, followed by the equally terrible earthquake, frightened all of us. We're still puzzled by the strange signs of civilization we found in the cave. Either this unknown planet once sheltered human life.
You mean humanoid life, since you don't know what they look like on the outside. All you have are some quick glimpses of those mummies. But the presence of mummies and a special place to put them suggests a very organized society.
Or mysterious beings still lurk in shadows, watching us this very minute. Perhaps one day we will return to the cave and learn more.
Don't forget the giants. They're humanoid too. It's possible that mummy you saw was a baby one of those, or some variant thereof.
It's working!
Let's see.
Don, look, it's working!
Yeah, I told you could do it.
What is it?
The inland sea.
No, I mean the thing Will fixed. In this scenario, the part with the intense heat didn't happen. They just headed back because. And we get the storm on the sea, Don needing to fix the solar batteries, getting swept overboard, the whole thing. Except we don't know why there was a problem with the solar batteries. The actual series tried to answer that question in an interesting way by having it result from a disagreement between Dr. Robinson and Major West. They get across the sea and we see a short version of the Thanksgiving overdubbed by Dr. Robinson's journal.
We've experienced dangers unknown by earthbound men. We breathe easily now, but only for the moment. Our every instinct tells us there are wild, wonderful adventures just ahead.
The mummy had hair, so it wasn't one of these guys. That means there's more than one humanoid race on this planet, and we'll never find out about any of them. Even the giant can't tell us anything. He's dead. Since I'm an almost lifelong fan of the show, it's hard to look at this objectively. The best way to review it would have been to have never seen the series and watch this on its own merits. I don't think any of us can do that. Comparisons are inevitable. And since the series used huge chunks of this episode, comparisons aren't necessarily out of line, as long as they're somewhat objective and let this somewhat stand on its own. You might recall from last time that I said those first 5 episodes had a lot of padding and filler. Now we have some idea why they were building around this framework and trying to fill in some of the big gaps, as well as introduce us to 2 more characters. The decision to stretch that to 5 full episodes may or may not have been the most effective one, but where that story has too much material, this doesn't have nearly enough. This pilot should have been a 2-hour special if they really wanted to market this version of the story. Too many things happen too fast. Too many things aren't explained. For example, meteor swarms don't just happen. They're the remnants of comets. I've already talked about that. Ground control should have known where that meteor swarm was and already plotted a course around it. Why did the cold weather just suddenly dissipate into tropical temperatures in a few days? Why was there trouble with the solar batteries when they were in the storm? For that matter, what kind of propulsion does the ship have? What kind of navigation instruments does it have? And most importantly, the one I already asked, why, traveling at the speed of light, does it take 100 years to travel 4.5 light years? Are we stopping at every roadside attraction along the way? The whole script feels rushed. In a 2-hour pilot, they might have been able to answer some of those questions and make this the basis for a viable show, but I get the feeling someone was fighting a deadline. We lacked one other thing here that's essential to a good sci-fi show, a villain. The only enemies so far are the giant, whom they only assumed was an enemy until they attacked him and removed all doubt, and the climate. The perils of weather just aren't enough to carry the story and keep it interesting. But you know what really makes me happy in all this? They didn't give up. They said, let's go back to the drawing board and make it better. And oh boy, did they. The addition of Dr. Smith and the robot made all the difference, and so did expanding the story to fill those gaps we mentioned. To my own thinking, 4 episodes would have been better than 5 because we could eliminate some of the padding. But 5 is what we got, and it was an instant hit. Thank the great producer they didn't give up. But I would really like to know who those 2 bald guys were. They kind of remind me of the brainiac aliens that Captain Pike ran into in the original Star Trek pilot, so maybe they're actors who really look like that, and they were just making the science fiction show rounds to put food on the table. Stranger things have happened. I'll see you next time you find yourself lost in Irvingland.